welcome again for another episode of Women Lifting Women, a podcast dedicated to female voices and leadership in tech. My name is Tamara. I host a podcast, and you've all already know who I am because you've been listening to the podcast, so it's okay. And more importantly, I'm joined today by Tamara, and I will let Tamara introduce herself. I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you for having me on the podcast. So I'm Tamara Littleton. I'm the founder and executive chair of Social Elements, which I started back in 2002, would you believe? So it's been a while. I started essentially starting a social media agency before social media existed. So it was before Twitter, which is now X, before YouTube, before Facebook. I think there was Bebo and MySpace was around at the time. And also I then started a tech company back in 2011, which I co-founded with my co-founder, Kate Hartley. And that is a tech company. It's essentially a crisis simulation company. We do immersive crisis training. And so we help brands we simulate them being attacked on social media and in the media with, journalists, and we role play the public, journalists and activists, and we create a really stressful environment for people to learn in. So I have a lot of fun with that company.
And you learn best from experience, right? You have
Absolutely.
to go through simulation. Though I have to ask, it wasn't an official question, but how social media, before social media, how did you even come up with the idea?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was very community based. So one of the big jobs, I had a couple of big jobs before taking the plunge. I was working at the BBC, and then after that, a Dutch company called Cello. But at the BBC, I think that's where I locked into the idea, because it was the early days of digital, online, web, and communities. So there were live chats and forums. You might remember how forums were so big. And I had I had a vision that at some point brands would move into these online communities, but need to have community management and brands be protected online. So I came up with the concept. And then when social media really took off from a marketing point of view, my agency sort of flipped much more into social media marketing. But we've always kept that protection at the heart of things as well.
And I think that even if you're doing social media marketing, it is community management in its core. It's
Yes.
about involving the audience and creating engaging experiences with the brand while still protecting the brand, right? It's still
completely. And with the voice of, brands like Dr. Pepper and Visa and Nissan. And so, yeah, we are protecting their brand, but we're also doing fabulous TikTok content and Instagram and content strategy. So yeah, it's evolved over the years, and I'm very proud of it.
You should be. And it's your baby.
Absolutely. Getting a bit old now.
Never. We are never getting old. That's I've decided. Never. We'll just stay not young, just experienced and mature, and some kind of a degree of mix of all together, just as a static state. And I'll start by my favorite question of all times, which I always do, because I think it's the best question. What do you think is the advantage of being a woman in your role or in the space you're in?
I mean, it is such a great question, and I've listened to many of your episodes. But it's also a question I struggle with, actually, because I think as a woman, I'm running an 8-figure scale up, which puts you into a small minority. So there have been so many times where I've gone out for sort of founders dinners and I'm literally the only woman in the room. And so there is that sort of minority. I'm also a very vocal and out gay leader, a gay woman leader, who puts me into a different minority as well. So I don't particularly feel like I fit into a mold, and I've always felt a bit of an outsider. However, I think that can be a position of strength as well. It can give you an advantage. You get remembered, you stand out. So, and what I've done is I've developed my own style of leadership and my own way of running my companies, and it's very much unique to me and things according to my values and the way that I want to do things. So perhaps rather than it's being an advantage of being a woman, I think it's more that you create your own advantage by being yourself.
I'm actually really curious about your own style of leadership. So, but I mean, I'm just going to roll with this. I'm curious, therefore, I want to learn. What do you think defines your style of leadership, and what did you find to be kind of really impactful for you?
I think when I started, because I'd had corporate background, I think I did come from a position of experience that there was a confidence of how to set up the company and, set up the different divisions, even though it was just me running them all at the beginning. But you think big. I think there was a certain sort of confidence and vision and how it was going to be. And I always wanted to set up global companies. I mean, I didn't necessarily know I wanted to set 2 companies up, but my first company, it was like, I want this to be big, I want this to make a difference. But then it was about taking every experience that I've ever had through my work and thinking I wanted to create a company where people really wanted to come and work there, that they felt safe there, they felt, engaged. So I wanted to create the company that I wanted to work in. So it's very people driven, it's very culture driven. And I think making decisions, I suppose I could have got bigger faster, but I was okay to do things in what I consider the right way. It's a very it's a kind approach to people and looking out for people. And I've never been frightened to sort of do things in my own way, because I set up a company before social media even existed. So I was creating my own industry. We set up a crisis simulation where I think there was, I wasn't aware of any other companies at the time, and then we found there were a couple of others. But again, it's about creating your own market. I think it's just that boldness to do it in my own way. And you see so many other people, often men, who are hugely confident and sort of have this huge presence, and they're running on stage and they're, great, big, huge personalities. And I'm not a big extroverted leader, and I've had to find my own way of just kind of running things from backstage a little bit, perhaps.
I mean, one thing is there is no right way of doing it necessarily. As you said, there is finding your own way and making it work. Second, I do think that you have still like this charisma that comes across. So I'm not sure that's completely true. And I think that you have your own personality. It's just maybe different than what you'll expect from a man or from someone else. And it's not, we suppose, necessarily, each of us can, I don't know, create our own gravitas, at least.
Yeah, it's a real critical thing. I think it's that awareness that, I could get worried that my own sort of style of presenting or managing was perhaps a little bit weird, a bit geeky sometimes. I get very, very passionate about things, but, it wasn't always polished. What was important is realizing that was me and that was my style. So to just lean into being that slightly weird, geeky, unpolished, passionate person, and that is the way that I lead.
And I think that will be memorable, and that will be exciting, and that will be, I mean, the unpolished part is normally a good thing, maybe more authentic, more relatable, more, absolutely. I know you can feel someone genuine behind it. But you said something very interesting. You said many more interesting things, but specifically I want to lean into leading with kindness and making people feel safe. One of my questions have been, how do we create better representation? What is our responsibility as women in leadership, or what is our responsibilities in general to create better representation? What do you feel is the responsibility of yourself, of other women in the space?
Well, I'm going to pick up on 2 things, because actually psychological safety is a big passion area for me, because it's something that is starting to be talked about more. But it's, I think when you can create a culture of kindness, and it's not just about, a happy cult-like, culture. Kindness is also you need to be commercially savvy and make important decisions. But I think every decision that we make, for example, the very tough decision of when you have to let people go from the agency, it can still be done in a kind, respectful way. For example, I think every time you communicate, you are giving off whether you are, if you have good values. And I think when people work in a culture where they do feel safe and that they have a voice and that they are heard, they will make better decisions, and they'll be better at making creative decisions because they are more likely to take risks. So yeah, that is something. There is a business reason to create psychological safety, but it's also just something I naturally do. With regards representation, I actually do feel I've got a duty. I've got a duty as you get to a certain level. You know, I'm now running 2 companies. I would be considered a sort of senior leader, and as I said, running up a scale up. I feel that it is important that I represent. It's important that I in the press with opinions, which is not always easy. I think for years I was kind of, I don't want to put my head over the parapet. I don't really want to be too opinionated, almost perhaps trained to not be, you know, rock the boat too opinionated. Now I'm going to be just like, you know what, I'm going to have opinions now, and I want people to know my opinions, and I will be often sort of quoted in the press with my very strong opinions. But also, you know, I'll go on podcasts. I also run my own podcasts as well. So I'm trying to represent at all different times. But I think it also is just the sort of grassroots representation in the industry. So the networks that you belong to. And I know that you had Julia Lynham as a previous guest, who was the founder of Digital Leading Ladies. And I sort of came in later stage to support with that group. It's a very vocal WhatsApp group, and then we all meet up at industry events and at Cannes, for example. I'm also a member just this year of something called WACL, which is in the creative industries. It's for women in advertising and communications leadership. So it was founded in 1923. So this is a group that has been going on for a long time, and they're very focused on accelerating gender equality in the advertising and communications industry. I've also sort of networked. I was privileged enough to go on a Silicon Valley female founders tech mission, where we went around and met people from Google and Meta and Snap, and that was incredible. So, but these networks that you belong to, you kind of have to work on them. But just by being part of those networks, you can facilitate change, and you also sort of get to know other people, and, you know, therefore representing just by showing up. So yeah, it's an important part. And, you know, obviously I mentioned about you know, being part of the LGBTQ plus community is a super important part of my personality as well. And I am not shy in affecting change in the industry in whatever way I can.
I'm really glad to hear it. I think that there's a lot of areas where we as an industry would probably need to improve. I have my own very strong opinions.
Do you want to share?
I mean, I'm opinionated, and I've never really been shy about sharing it, but I'll just share a story of one of the things that really worried me. I think that I was trying to do an event for Pride a couple of years back. My husky has just arrived at home, so she might join us at any time. But I was trying to do something for Pride a few years back, and I remember trying to get people, because I wanted to have conversations, just open conversation about the experience and basically people's different experiences and the journey they've went through. And I was shocked by how few people were willing to share. And I do this podcast for females, and I think that at least as women, we're at least feeling more comfortable about sharing it, our experiences. And within the community, the plus community, I just feel we still have such long way to go. And it's one very sad. And I think we're always going through like this progression, and we're going 3 step backs. And like, it always feels like a bit of a journey. We're going to 1 step forward and 3 step back. Many people already know this, but some does not. I also produced a film recently about modern art. And one of the artists I worked with was Bimini, who's one of the most well-known drag queens here in the UK. And they talk a lot about their experience, and also they're a strong advocate for the LGBTQ plus community here in London and in the UK, and trans rights in general, and what they have seen and experienced in terms of progression towards currently feeling under severe attack.
Yeah.
And I think that's one, we're all in it together. If one group, like, it always goes, like, if someone thinks that they're safe, hatred is contagious. If some group is under attack, you're going to be next. Don't think that you're somehow safe from it, because this is not you.
Totally.
Second, if we're not able to treat people with fundamental kindness at first, there is something really wrong with us.
Yeah. It's about driving equality and not trying to take that from someone else in order to drive your own equality, as it were. So that's not how equality works.
Yeah, it's not a competition of who's more equal. I
Yes.
think that's definitely, oh, if someone else gets equality, and I always believe it. I think it's a slippery slope, and the next person is always, like, you've seen it through history.
Yeah.
And my own background, I've obviously seen it through history. I was born in Israel, and that's a different type of, like, you've seen it through history. So I mean, we might as well start learning from it.
Yeah.
So talking to, I think that I obviously, Chris Kenna has been a good friend over the
Yeah,
past.
he's a great guy. Yeah.
Really great guy. His business is also really focused on creating that visibility, equality, and giving equal opportunities. And if you know, there is a podcast initiative called Mosaic about representation in podcasting, and those are, I think, are amazing initiatives that I would love to. I'm really excited to be part of, and also really would love to see more of in the industry.
Yeah, I think that's it. Everything. There's a great group in America called Do the Work, and that kind of like that really sort of sums it up. It's like we can't take representation or equality as a given, and people do need to continue to do the work to do that.
In your company, have you made any kind of, I don't know, have you implemented any rules, or, like, not rules, guidelines or best practices to how to promote when you hire, when you bring people on, and you create those spaces and opportunities for representation?
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a big sort of an area of interest for me, and one of the companies that we work with is called Creative Equals, that we brought in to audit us, several years back, because I think you get what you measure. So we've been really focused on diversity in the agency. We're a team of, at the Social Element, it's a team of about 300 people globally. And so the very model that we use, because I started it as a remote agency all those years ago, I think obviously as a global company, we have great ethnic diversity, but we've also focused on things like neurodiversity, where we realized that we were not tracking so well because we measured it. We now have 19% of our workforce are neurodiverse. We have 14% of our workforce working with a disability. Again, I know these stats off the top of my head because we measure them, and we have made changes to change the sort of how the agency works. That includes things like employee resource groups, for example, who then drive change. So, we have the LGBTQ ERG that helps, change the way that we change policies and the language that we use. We introduce pronouns into the agency. So a lot of the changes are not just driven by me and my chief people officer, they come from within the company. And I think that's so important, because then everyone is involved. But it's also how we market ourselves, it's how we attract talent, because it's about driving great talent, but also keeping that talent as well. So yeah, it's an area that I'm very focused on. And, when we're working with the biggest brands in the world, they have to know that our team represents their consumers. So we are very, very diverse as an agency.
I love that. And I love the whole the concept around you are what you measure, and the fact that keeping yourself accountable and making sure that you only also deliver on what, like, you don't just believe in it, but you make sure that you deliver on it, which I think is super important in terms of
I think that's my geeky side coming through, right?
I love measuring everything, and I love charts and numbers. I was like really sad the other day, and I was like, I don't know, send me some table, like send me some Excel sheet. I'll be happier. And my husband really made fun of me for a long time. It's all right. I was like, fair enough. I'll do the analysis myself. Just give me some numbers. I'll be happier. Just leave me alone. Me and my numbers will be happy.
You need that dopamine hit of a graph going up in the right way, right?
Anything, just like let me regulate, I don't know, just research. Sometimes I need the break in my role to just do my research and just like a bit of like, yeah, this is fun. And I've really miss that side of my previous roles. But I get sometimes to kind of play around with numbers again, which makes me really happy. So I understand measurement is important. I appreciate someone who likes numbers. And I mean, that's really not connected at all. But I'll switch to also something I find really important, if it's not as such an uplifting question. It is really, because challenges and overcoming them. And I think that when it's really an important thing to talk about. One, for us and people listening to always know that they're not alone in facing those obstacles. And that thinking that shared sense of togetherness, we know that it's not us and we're not crazy and other people are facing it. And second, it gives us ideas to how we might be able to overcome the same obstacle because someone else did it before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm happy to share some challenges and obstacles. I would say that in a way, as a founder of a company, you can be your own obstacle. You don't, because it's sometimes it's kind of getting over yourself. I understand that I am a control freak, and not necessarily in a bad way. It just means that I am focused on the detail. I suppose also being quite self-aware, a bit of a people pleaser, and very a bit of a perfectionist. So none of these things are easy to live with. And when you're running a company, and I've always been obsessed about, running the best company, the driving for success, but it's not just for like a financial success. It's more that I wanted to be the best for our clients. I wanted to give them the best experience, but also attract the best staff. So that's a lot of pressure. But if you're focused on all of the little details, you are not going to scale. So over the years, I had to learn to sort of let go and trust other people, and also hire people who were going to bring things to the company that I could never do. So it is about letting go of your ego and hiring the best people and then getting out of their way. And one of the sort of, I suppose, the end, so I've been doing that for years. And, sometimes I get pulled back in, but there are sort of phrases that I love. One of them is about, you have to be working on the business, not in the business. And in a similar way, there's a great phrase that I picked up from Helm, which is an entrepreneurs club, which was nose in, fingers out. So you can you have to know what's going on. You can kind of stick your nose in and you hold people accountable, but don't start trying to sort of run things yourself. And so I think as you're sort of scaling, and if you want to scale, you have to be able to pull back. You have to be able to trust others, and you have to check your ego at the door and just hire people who are better than you, who are going to take the company in a different direction and do things that you could never dream of. I'm privileged enough to know that that's what I've been able to do. And I have some incredible people at the agency who really are doing things that I genuinely go, wow, I had no idea that we could do that. And it's incredible and it's humbling. But it has enabled me to, over the years, be able to let go and let other people drive the momentum, which has actually allowed me to run another company, because believe me, it's not easy to run one company. It's definitely harder to run two companies. So to be able to trust others to drive things so that I can switch my attention to two, it wouldn't be possible if I hadn't had that approach to scaling.
I think that, I mean, working in a startup, you see the journey almost. Even in the earlier stage, it's really hard, especially as a for founders, to let go, and you bring in new people and they have new opinions. It's a really hard challenge. What do you think was when was the switching moment? What made you see, you know what, I have to do this. I have to let go. How did you manage to do it?
Okay, so I'm being very honest here. It wasn't necessarily by design. I think the first time it happened, we were probably only an agency of about 75 people. So as I said, there's about 300 now, and that's a mixture of staff and flexible contractors. Because of the model that we have, it's kind of it's global. But there was a time where I got very ill, and I didn't have a choice. I had to let my second in command. I mean, she wasn't my second in command at the time, and she very quickly became my second in command. I didn't have a choice, and she did an amazing job, and so that was the sort of the start of understanding that maybe the problem was me, that I was holding on too much, and I could let other people drive things. It happened again. By this point, I'd already sort of brought in, an exec team. And I think as soon as you bring in an exec team and it doesn't feel like you're running things on your own, it makes a massive difference. And you just naturally sort of, delegate and let people have more autonomy. And with Polpeo, I started that from the beginning as a co-founder. And I think automatically you are dividing up you're dividing up your roles. So it's a very different thing. That there wasn't the control freakiness with Polpeo that there was with the beginning of Social Element. But I think every time there was a time that I had to be off, I had a hysterectomy, which if anyone has been through that, it's quite a sort of serious surgery, and you're off work for like maybe 5 to 6 weeks, which when you are running a company feels like 3 months.
Yeah.
And my exec team were incredible. And rather to my shame, I think we had the best month that we'd ever had up until that point, because I think they wanted to show me I've got this.
I got it.
And yeah. And that was several years ago now. But those moments reinforce. But I think, even though I'm not so much of a control freak or an egotistical person, that I think I knew that that's what I would had to do, that's what I had to do to grow the company. But it's kind of good to get that affirmation when you put trust in other people, you give them autonomy, you step away, and they do brilliant things. It's kind of like, okay, they've got this. It's a very freeing feeling.
I mean, I can imagine, and I think that it's, even if it's the practice, sometimes it's really hard to know. Like, it's really easy to know something. Yes, I need to do it. It's really hard to live something. So definitely that's why I was kind of wondering about the journey of learning to let go and trusting others to take the company forward. And as you build a bigger and bigger company, it always becomes, there's, I think, multiple steps where a company grow, and it's kind of the growing pains.
Yeah, and I know from my past, even when I was like working, when I was like 17, 18, whatever, I worked in a bookshop. I was given so much trust. I was allowed to lock up, and I was a baby, and I was able to sort of like take home, lock up, take the keys home. That felt like a big, I was trusted, and it makes you better at your job. It makes you feel more invested and more involved. So, sometimes you have to just remind yourself that you don't have to do everything, that these people are adults, and you've hired great people, so just get out of their way and let them do it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I tell my team is you're grown up, so I don't need to, I trust you. You need to trust yourself. You'll manage, you'll be all right. If you really need me, I'll be here, but you know what, you can do it. And I think that's, the end of the day, I remember that I was working the hardest in my life when someone believed in me and I wanted to prove them right.
Yeah.
And I think that was a great lesson for me, for example.
It's intoxicatingly powerful to be trusted.
I agree. I think on every level, from every person in your life, this is the feeling that someone trusts you. You feel that you have to keep it. And So as I felt, I hope that my team feels as well. I hope. We'll need to bring them on to ask them, but
I'm sure.
we will see. We'll take a vote. If you had to share one tip of everything that you know what, that you really wish you knew earlier, that you would recommend everyone to keep in mind while building their career, what would that be?
I believe that this might have been covered before, but do you know what? Sometimes it's an oldie but a goodie. But it is about your network, and your network starts when you are, early on in your career, and people that you meet might come back into your life later on in your career. You just never know. But I think you have to put that effort in. And the tip that I had is it's not just start a network and be better at networking. You have to push yourself out of your comfort zone. For some people, perhaps who are more extroverted, this is not a big problem. They're out there meeting people. It's a kind of second nature. I think I've touched upon the fact that, I actually sit in I'm an ambivert, which means that I am a lot of the time, I can be quite extroverted and passionate. Get me on a karaoke stage, oh my God, I will take over. However, a lot of the time, my energy comes, I need to be by myself to sort of, get my energy levels back up again. So it's more, I'm kind of in the middle. And public speaking, going into a room, especially, as I said, often I was the only woman in the room. It wasn't always my favorite thing. And I pushed myself to do it. I paid for outside consultants and trainers to help me get better, because everyone can be better at things. If you're not good at something, just learn and get help, and push yourself, because when you are out of your comfort zone, that is really where the magic happens. And also, I know that as time has gone on, I have got better. It genuinely feels like a positive thing to go into a room and meet people, and there are sort of tips that I use about trying to be with other people I know. Is I'm much more confident if I've got like wing people, that kind of thing. You make something fun, because the power of that network is everything. But actually, I've just used the word fun. I think that is important as well. I have the privilege of running 2 companies. I have the privilege of, I do wake up, and most days I am very happy and I enjoy my work still, all of these years on, because I've made it fun, and I've made sure that I am, living life to the full, meeting interesting people, doing stuff that I want to do. So it is about the network and finding those connections with people, but try and find that joy as well.
I love both the tips, and I said it in a different podcast. I remember I was speaking to Ravit, and she was saying, you always enjoy, like, you enjoy networking, or like you're such an extrovert. And it's like, oh, that's not natural. This is not a natural thing, that it didn't come naturally to me. This is not who I naturally am. This is something I've learned. So I can completely relate to, if you're not good at something, learn it. And the importance of networking and being visible and communicating to people is everything. And people, today, people work with people buy from people, we're engaging with people. Regardless of your role, you work with people, and therefore that's the basics. And if you're not good at it, you can learn. There is hope. And joy. I love that.
And
Always.
don't assume that everybody is loving it and you're the only one who doesn't, because chances are
Everyone
hates it and everyone's masking. And actually, you go in with that attitude and it is a lot easier, kind of like almost, you kind of burst that bubble a little bit. In fact, that's a great way to go up and speak to people, and you go, oh my God, I hate this. And they'll probably say, oh my God, I hate it too. And then you bond over that.
Exactly. I wish I was at home in front of the TV with Coco and my dog. See, that's probably what everyone is thinking. Everyone is like, okay, I'm having a beer. Good enough. All right. But so nobody feels really comfortable in a room where they know no one, because no, but it's not a comfortable situation.
Yeah.
I've been in that situation. At least I normally have my dog in that situation. So I'm like, Aurora, keep me company. I went to Cannes alone twice. I was like, okay, I'll find people. I don't know. I'll have to find people to hang out with me. You Nobody likes it. There is nobody who's enjoying the situation. You're definitely not the only person in the room. You just feel like you are.
Yeah, and just push through and find just a couple of people, and then everything gets easier.
Exactly. So at least that's what I tell myself every time. Game face. So I mean, proof like I think it becomes easier once you do it a few times. You see you can, and it just becomes easier. So apparently now it looks supernatural. I come off as an extrovert, all fake. So here we are. That's
Definitely not fake. I think it's actually, do you know what? I think there is the thing about with experience comes sort of wisdom and perhaps being a little bit more comfortable in your own skin. So it probably just becomes a bit easier the more you do it, as with everything.
I am mostly joking, though I remember going to a bathroom before an event in my company and go like, no, put my makeup on. It's now game face. It's like now I'm like, this is almost like a character. You're going into a character. So I think it's a different side of my personality, but I do have to pull her, like, dig her from inside. And like, now this is your time. So I don't know if this is really an acting, but I think that's also somehow you connect to a different side of yourself. This is how it comes authentic. But so it's not really fake, but it is, we all are complex people, different facets, and sometimes we have to pull on different sides of our personality, though there is a big part of us that prefer to, I know, cuddle on a sofa. My favorite thing to do.
We need to channel our more energetic extrovert selves, pull them out from beneath us.
Try to like get that side. Even my dog has different sides. So like, of course I do as well. She has her energetic, outgoing side, and she just, now I want to sleep. So like, I think that's also true for us.
I read about an event where you go and sort of sit in the library or bookshop maybe, and you just read your book, but people are allowed to chat if they want to, but they don't have to. And so you're just with other people reading and occasionally chatting. And I thought, I think they should have a networking event like that.
So last time, podcast movement, I was just in the DC, and what I was most excited about is the puppies. I was like, I will play with puppies and I might chat with people, but that seems like a great activity and a great networking. Like, I don't know, because it gives me something to do. And I can play with puppies, which is the most important part. So I think I love books as well. I'm willing to do books. I mean, like, there's a list of things I wish we would do more of.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that will help people connect as well. Yeah. But we drink instead. We don't have to. I know a few people just ordering vodka soda instead. So that's not mandatory. But it's still, that's what we normally do.
I'm just going to do a bit of a shout out to Google.
Please.
So at Cannes, I've been going to the Google Pride Party. That's part of the Lions. And they have it on the Thursday night, and it's the most inclusive beach party because they have an area, they've targeted it for introverts and extroverts and gender neutral bathrooms. They've just thought of everything, and I literally can't wait to go every year. So that, when people do start thinking that is real inclusiveness, when they're actually thinking about the introverts amongst us as well.
That is actually, I didn't know. Now I'm gonna look out for it next year. And hopefully they will let me in. And then including and that's a really, really good point. I think it's just trying to remember different people have different needs, and think differently about what inclusivity can look like. So yeah, that's a great note to also end. So thank you again so much, Tamara, for joining me. It was so much fun. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had fun.
I had great fun. Thank you so much, Emma. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for listeners, and thank you for joining for another episode of Women Lifting Women. If you want to go and listen to more episodes, the full episode, go to www.womenliftingwomen.io, the new website, and we have more and more exciting chapters to come.